The part of Anatolia's northern coast, which would later be known as Pontus, experiences wet, warm summers. In the deep, dark reaches of the past, thousands of years ago, a lone woman paces along the wooden harbour of a city bordering the Black Sea. That city is the mythical Themyscira, the capital of the legendary Amazons. This woman, bearing only one breast and grasping a fighting spear, finally relaxes her gaze. A single ship comes into view, sailing closer and closer every moment amidst a midsummer downpour. In a rush, the lady makes her way across the Thermodon River. There, the city's queen, Hippolyta, holds court in a chamber filled solely with other women akin to her and the makeshift sentry. Informed of their uninvited visitors, Hippolyta strides out to meet them accompanied by a large crowd and clad in the legendary Girdle of Ares, Greece's fearsome god of war. As she arrives at the harbour, the small ship has docked. Out of it climb men, a small group of companions. One in particular, possessing a formidable bearing, steps forward from their ranks, keenly regarded by the strange queen in front of him. That man is Heracles, divine hero of Greek mythology, who is serving penitence for slaying his own family in years past. To this end, he tells Hippolyta, he has slain great beasts, captured many more, and accomplished tasks previously thought impossible. Now he comes to faraway, unfamiliar Themyscira for but one thing, the magical girdle worn by the city's Amazonian queen, granted to her by Ares himself. Impressed by her guest's riveting tale of enterprise and daring, Hippolyta prepares to remove the girdle and hand it to Heracles of her own free will. Then, however, a shout resounds among the crowd. An Amazonian woman darts back and forth through the thronging crowd of her fellows, wailing that these strangers were seizing their queen and intended to spirit her away. Passionate to protect their ruler, a small army of mounted female warriors charges downhill on horseback, clashing with Heracles and his friends. Suspecting betrayal, the Greek hero slays Hippolyta, seizes the belt by force, and then sails back to Troy, his 9th labour complete. Polydorus's age-old rendition of Heracles' 12 labours is obviously far from historical fact, with its inclusion of gods, heroes and monsters. However, such an unconventional people as the Amazonians may be a distorted reflection of a traditionally barbarian group which the oral poet or initial ancient author may have heard of or experienced in the real world, possibly a tribe of Scythian nomads. Whatever the inspiration behind the Amazons was, it was typically foreign to the Greek experience. Many of their customs, such as the early removal of one breast to facilitate combat prowess, might make your average citizen of classical Athens or Thebes shudder in horror. Moreover, as indicated by the presence of Ares' divine girdle and the passion-driven cavalry charge at Heracles and his friends, the Amazons were stereotypically warlike. The Homeric age of Greek myth neared its end with the Trojan War, in which another barbarian group entered historical sight for the first time, the Thracians. Under their king Rhaesus, they allied with Troy during the city's conflict with the Achaeans, leading the latter to launch a nighttime raid in which the Thracian king was killed. It was the first of many violent meetings between the two peoples. When the Greek world emerged from the Dark Age initiated by the end of Bronze Age civilization, many independent city-states began rising to prominence. These thriving political entities began deliberately sending or accidentally spawning colonists who took to the seas and proliferated throughout the Mediterranean world. Archaeological finds on the Chalcidice reveal that bold pioneers from the island of Euboea were first to settle new cities in the north, specifically on the peninsula's western and central arms. Although it was a part of the Thracian world at the time, the Chalcidice would eventually become a key extension of the Hellenic world. Around the midpoint of the 7th century BC, colonists from Andros joined their southern Greek kin and created 4 more colonies in the Strymon Valley: Sane, Acanthos, Stagira, and Argylos. This trend of migration and settlement continued until the entire coastline of Thrace was pockmarked by bustling Greek enclaves, both on the Aegean and Black Seas. By the end of the 7th century BC, Athens occupied its first colony in the area, Sigeon. From the moment of the first contact, resourceful Athenian statesmen saw the potential function of these barbarians as killers for hire. In the mid-500s, for example, a tyrant known as Pisistratos hired units of Thracian mercenaries in liberal quantities to serve as his politically detached personal bodyguard in the city, who would deal with their paymasters' internal enemies when it was necessary. Most of the contact between Athens and Thrace revolved around military affairs such as these, and therefore the most easily visible cross-cultural influence was martial in nature. One of the main contributions of the Thracian warrior to Greek warfare was the peltast, a lightly armed skirmishing unit employed heavily by tribes from the region. Although traditional heavily armoured Greek citizen hoplites were one of the most formidable troop variants of their age, the hoplon-bearing soldiers crucially lacked flexibility and mobility. This was a tactical gulf which Thracian tribal warriors, armed with light javelins, a crescent-shaped peltast shield, and protected by a tunic made of wood or flax, filled brilliantly. The potential benefits to Greek armies of supplementing heavy infantry with Thracian skirmishers was shown clearly during the height of the Peloponnesian War between Athens and its Spartan enemy. In 425, at the Isle of Saphecteria, a trapped force of 450 elite Spartan hoplites was assaulted by a small contingent of Athenian hoplites in combination with a larger group of Thracian mercenary peltasts. Each time the highly trained Spartan spearmen attempted to advance, swarms of nimble harassing troops descended on them from all sides, harrying, wounding and killing the armoured soldiers with terrible ease. At the turn of the 4th century BC, Athenian mercenary general Xenophon and his band of 10,000 hoplites embarked on their famous Anabasis, escaping from an Achaemenid dynastic civil war and eventually reaching Byzantium. There he was contacted by an agent of the king of the Odrysians, a Thracian tribe that had managed to consolidate most of the region, known as Seuthes II. Keen to put Xenophon's veteran hoplites to work for his own ends, namely exterminating his regional enemies, Seuthes held council with the Athenian general to discuss business. After Xenophon spoke of his situation and willingness, the Thracian king replied by declaring that he should not distrust anyone who was an Athenian, for he knew that the Athenians were kinsmen of his, and he believed they were loyal friends. Taken with Xenophon, and satisfied that his men would do nicely, the wealthy Seuthes enrolled all of them at once, supplementing his native Thracian peltasts and cavalry with heavy infantry. Indeed, by Xenophon's time, Thracians were making use of imported Hellenic craftsmanship, products crafted by Greeks living in Thrace, or even items fashioned by native Thracians who had learned to emulate the artistic techniques of their sophisticated southern neighbours. Even language was one of the aspects of Hellenic civilization which proliferated north. At some of Seuthes' court banquets attended by Xenophon, wine servers commonly, although somewhat unexpectedly, spoke Greek. The Thracian warlord himself, although he used an interpreter at times, was actually able to follow most details of a conversation in Greek personally. Southern Greek interactions with Thrace came to an end with the rise of Macedon, a force with which the natives would have a far more violent relationship. Cooperation and conflict, interaction and interference are the qualities that define the relationship of the Greeks, and specifically the rich Athenians, with their tribal neighbours. It was often implied by ancient scholars that the brilliance of Hellenic culture, the strength of its warriors, and resilience of its form was inspired by a clash between Greeks and the barbarian. However, while the Greeks themselves constructed a culture almost unrivaled in the ancient world, its story could not have been told without the barbarians amongst them. It could have been a Thracian king importing Hellenic pottery to decorate his citadel, a Toxotai going about his work of enforcing peace in Athens, or a craftsman who caught a glimpse of Thracian clothing and had a eureka moment, but all of them were influenced by and influenced the Greeks in equal measure.